We are like the spider. We weave our life and then move along in it. We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives the dream. What if there was a place weaved from clay and glue? A world where dreams seep into reality and nightmares take on a tangible form. Imagine a point and click adventure where every click of the mouse could lead you deeper into the labyrinth of the human subconscious, where every click pulls you deeper into the machine. The Dream Machine is a game crafted with an almost obsessive attention to detail. Every character molded from clay and animated with stop-motion precision seems to harbor secrets behind their wide, barely animated black eyes. Their expression, almost motionless as they try to communicate with the player through the screen. This is a game of mystery and mostly exploration. You'll wander through dimly lit hallways, descend into the depths of the human mind, and encounter speaking squirrels while trying to barter with said squirrels over an acorn. As hilarious as it may seem, beneath its dreamlike and rather frankly absurd premise, the Dream Machine presents a story that grapples with deeper themes, with characters hurt and haunted by doubt and guilt. Not only does it portray these heavier themes through its exploration of the subconscious mind, but also the exploration of the preconscious mind. This is a very special game to me. It's one of those games that stay with you long after the credits roll, forcing you to question your own perceptions and the world around you. And as such, I want to do it justice. I've been wanting to do a video on it for as long as I can remember. I've been drawn to this game for a very long time, since I first touched it in 2012, or maybe it stuck with me when I tried to replay it in 2018, struggling to get the motivation to get past the first chapter, and then buying the rest of the chapters in 2025. But one thing is certain, every restart, every time I did that intro again and again and forgot it, about 6 years have passed between each time I played it. The first time in 2012 when I was 7, then in 2018 when I was 13, and finally in 2024 when I was 19. The atmosphere remained intact, that hazy morning, the overcast sky and the island. Ah, yes, the island. This year I came back with motivation, not to learn about the subconscious mind, but to immerse myself in a world built around it, to dig into the past and discover something I've been aching to have for a long time. An answer. To finally learn who the main character is. Who Victor Neff. But let's not get ahead of ourselves yet, and take things one at a time. Let's talk about who it's made by and how it was made before delving deeper into the lore. The Dream Machine, as I said earlier, is an adventure game developed by Cockroach Incorporated, a small two-people development company run by one Anders Gustafsson and one Erik Zaning. The game's graphics form an interesting blend of live-action digitized clay figures, similar to the ones seen in stop-motion animations, and digitized environments, while also utilizing a variety of techniques to create the backdrops of the world. Most of the things that appear in the game are handmade from a variety of materials, be it clay, cardboard, cotton wads, pebbles, baking paper, moss, and others. And because of the way it's painstakingly crafted, it led to the development cycle of the game taking a total of 14 years. But it also resulted in an incredibly detailed and stunning looking game, which ends up running into a few performance issues because of how outdated the game's engine is. To put into perspective, the game was being developed when Flash was still being widely used by a lot of indie developers. By the time the Dream Machine development cycle was over, Flash was already being discontinued and was losing support from Adobe. Good thing the game's getting a definitive edition soon enough, which aims to fix all the Adobe jank and give it widescreen support, as well as other endings. I've played it a bit after replaying the original and it feels much better to control, but the text is a bit janky at the moment. Either way, when it comes out, it will become the definitive way to experience the Dream Machine. It's also getting a movie made about its story, which is, again, only great news. All these announcements are what partially led me back and drew me to pursue making this video with a bit more passion in the first place. The movie, or at least the shorts they released to announce that the movie is releasing, opens with the same scene the game opens with. Although this time around it's altered. A voice can be heard in the background talking about the forming of sand, as Victor disintegrates into sand.
Sand forms when rocks break down from weathering and eroding over thousands and even millions of years. One of the beauties of nature and time. I imagine it would be like laying on a cloud. How comfortable.
Then imagine what sand in
As he reforms, a giant cruise ship passes in the background and eventually it turns to night as he gets overwhelmed by tentacles and killed.
It's
Quite the grim way to open the movie, if this is what they are going for. Perhaps it is merely an announcement, however, although it is very different to an absurd degree when comparing it to the game's opening.
We've got to leave.
Either way, this being a lot of additional information, we can skip it for now and talk about the story/gameplay. So let's dive into it. The game opens with the quote I showed in the beginning of the video, as we awake on a small tropical island. The overcast sky and two palm trees and the wrecked ship all creating a very dissonant atmosphere, almost nonsensical and oxymoronic. Tropical islands should be presented in sun rays, basking in the heat, yet the image we're shown is one of cold and utter dissonance. As we gather our bearings, we begin to pick up items all over the island. Eventually managing to start a fire, we set up a fishing rod and bait it with a worm we found in the ground by digging. We get a fish, which we kill and then roast, and while our character eats it, he finds a piece of paper inside showing a treasure map. But as soon as we dig the treasure, a clock, its alarm blaring, materializes out of thin air, jolting us awake. The insistent buzzing of the alarm clock pulls us back to reality. Victor Neff, our protagonist, stirs from his slumber, his eyes heavy with the remnants of the dream. Above his bed, a painting hangs, depicting the very island he just traversed in his sleep. Victor's currently unemployed and has recently moved into this sparse, barely furnished apartment with his pregnant wife Alicia, in the hope of starting a new chapter in both their lives and putting the basis of a family amidst the uncertainty of the circumstances. Inside the apartment, we're greeted by a sense of both familiarity and unease. Boxes overflowing with forgotten memories line the walls, remnants of a life left behind, and the start of a new one. Among the items, we can find an electric guitar. We know Victor used to play in a band, but now with the responsibility of his child on the way, he must abandon a lot of the things he used to love. Looking through the boxes, through some Pikmin-like toys and books, we find a telephone which we plug into a socket. This will be important later. In the kitchen, we meet Alicia, who's preparing breakfast. She tasks us with finding something to eat, their breakfast meal on, since the movers have yet to arrive with the furniture. A quick detour to the bathroom reveals little of interest, but we notice a bottle of baby oil, which we instinctively pick up. Take note, this again will be important later. While looking for a suitable object to use as a table, we find amongst the clutter an ashtray. Inside, a letter, charred and fragmented, reveals a hidden message. We carefully piece it together, and the scorched fragments deciphering a cryptic note from a previous tenant, informing us there's something utterly sinister under the floorboards in the bedroom. Victor shares the unsettling discovery with Alicia, but she dismisses it as an overactive imagination, saying it's too good to be true and comparing it to something out of a mystery novel. Eventually, we find a cardboard box to set as a table and have breakfast with our wife. During breakfast, we are reminded that we left our keys with the caretaker/landlord. Since at this point we are unsure what he is, we only know his name ends in Orton. Alicia mentions she had a strange dream last night in which he appeared, but she's too disturbed to talk about it while eating. If you confront her after the breakfast, she tells you she had a dream in which she was relaxing on a cruise boat and she ended up giving birth to the landlord, having waken up right after. Disturbing, but Victor merely shrugs it off as being a pregnancy dream and nothing more. After talking to Alicia, we go check out our mail next to the front door, and a letter that bears the insignia of the local tenants association seems to be fallen right at the base of the door. We realize that maybe dialing them we can get the phone number of our landlord, so we proceed to open the envelope in the hopes of finding some number to call. During the entire opening section, we notice multiple things about Victor. Through his environment and his remarks, he appears to be quite disinterested but sincere, almost like he hadn't yet accommodated to the idea of starting a family. Returning to the envelope, inside, unsurprisingly, there's a number to call. So we dial it, only to be greeted by a voice that seems both bored and vaguely irritated. They ask for our addresses and our landlord's name in order to give us his number. Easy enough, right? Except our landlord's name seems to have vanished from our brain entirely. After a moment of fumbling and vague mumbling, to be more exact, running in between places and asking Alicia about it, we finally recall his name, partially, and get his phone number. We quickly dial their number, a voice on the other end asks us the address and the landlord's name. It seems to have slipped our mind, but we eventually come to and get the landlord's name and phone number. And with that, with renewed determination, we dial the landlord's number. This time a voice, gruff but ultimately helpful, at least that's how I imagine it to sound like, mentions he forgot to bring it last night and tells us to wait. If you try to leave and meet the movers downstairs, Alicia tells you to wait. She's adamant that we don't leave her alone with the landlord, as she is uncomfortable talking to him after her dream last night. After a few minutes, true to his word, although still fashionably late, the landlord shows up and hands us over the key for our apartment. Heading outside our apartment, we notice the elevator door seems to be stuck. We quickly make acquaintance with our neighbor Eddie, an elderly woman who reveals she never really did like Mr. Morton that much. She comments on the fact he tried to evict her shortly after his father died and sighs at the thought of the apartment complex breaking down due to his incompetence. After chatting with her, we step back into the hallway, and using the baby oil we got from the bathroom earlier, we manage to force the doors open and descend in order to meet the movers. On the bottom floor, we encounter one of the movers from the company tasked with delivering our furniture, or as it turns out, strategically jamming it into the doorways. This poor guy, with all the charisma of a middle school hall monitor, has managed to wedge our couch so tightly in the doorway that neither he nor the couch is going anywhere anytime soon. When we approach him, he shrugs and explains that company policy strictly prohibits moving furniture beyond the threshold of any door-to-door service. He says as though reading directly from a company handbook. Although he later realizes that by blocking the door with the couch, he has locked himself in too, but he's so self-absorbed into being lazy that he just hands us the crowbar to move it ourselves while he lays on the armchair next to the entrance. We attempt to move the couch with the crowbar, but no matter how much we try, it just won't budge. We try enlisting the help of Mr. Morton, but he's totally useless in this regard. Unfortunately, these contributions to the conversation amount to a lot of shrugging and phrases like sorry, no, can do, mostly. We ask him about the strange dream our wife had last night, and that suddenly piques his curiosity. His eyes glimmer and as he starts getting more involved than usual, which should already put up a lot of red flags in Victor's head, mostly because his interest, especially in our wife's dream, seems outright creepy. He starts asking pointed questions, especially about the environment and the details of the dream, with a curiosity that borders on invasive, mostly about the ship and if anything unusual appeared in her dream. His sudden enthusiasm is unnerving and almost lets us know he knows something we don't. So we dodge the details, mutter some vague responses and blame it on her pregnancy, and promptly wrap up the conversation before he gets too invested. We return with the crowbar from earlier to the front door, but unable to move the furniture, we decide to move back to our apartment and remove the floorboards under the light switch in the bedroom, like the letter from the previous tenant told us. We find a big circuit board right under the planks we removed. We quickly start working to get the resistors back into place, but it ends up short-circuiting the fuse. After using our apartment key as a makeshift fuse, the circuit powers up a mechanism behind the painting above the bed, the one our dream was based on. Behind it, a huge camera stands tall. It seems to have been recording us the entire time. Victor quickly tells Alicia to call the police while he goes to confront Mr. Morton. After breaking into his study and doing some light puzzle solving based on his dream journals, we managed to open a secret door to an underground lair, to be more exact, the basement. There we can hear him in the hallway arguing with someone, but when we enter the room he's all knocked out next to a big machine. When examining the posters on the wall, it seems to insinuate the fact that the machine is some sort of dream manipulation device. There are two helmets, one for the receiver and one for the sender. Based on the drawings and the diagram on the wall, Victor puts the helmets on both him and the landlord and he enters his dream. This is where the game truly begins. We enter Mr. Morton's dream, a cloudy and ethereal landscape with a rocky floor, which has the aspect of some ruins up in the sky. There are multiple statue heads of ginormous size hidden around different portals. We can wake them up one at a time and try to solve their puzzles. One is without hearing, one without voice, and one without sight. Solving each of the puzzles, we learn from each of the hands that they are Mr. Morton's ancestors, or at least his recollected memory of them. This vast ancient space in which we exist, we learn, represents the shared inherited reservoir of human experiences and archetypes. The ruins symbolize remnants of forgotten or suppressed aspects of Mr. Morton's psyche, representing the disintegration of his connection with his authentic self due to abuse and responsibilities imposed on him. The giant statue heads hidden around the portals are archetypes representing different facets of Mr. Morton's personality and his ancestral lineage. Each head embodies a specific aspect of the self represented by his relatives. The Jungian term for the totality of the psyche, including both conscious and unconscious elements. We learn from them Mr. Morton was physically abused when he was little and forced to take on the responsibility of the Dream Machine from his elders. This being the research of his entire bloodline, although the machine seems to have gained consciousness and has gone rogue. After doing a puzzle involving portals with the information gathered from all the heads, we managed to find Mr. Morton, but it's far too late for him. He has been mortally injured, and because of the way the machine works, he is now dying. He mentions that because he had an argument with the machine on the way the experiments were going and decided to shut it down, as it seemed to have become malevolent, the machine struck back. Victor argues with him, asking if dreams aren't supposed to be ideal, but he says dreams are not ideal, so Freud's beliefs of dreams was wrong. Earlier, we had cut down a tentacle when we found Mr. Morton, one holding him, the root of the machine in his dream. In his dying breath, he tells us that in order to kill the machine, we must visit each of the residents that are sleeping inside the building and cut their tentacles out, so the machine loses control of them and can finally die. And with that, Mr. Morton dies, living up to a colossal task of not only putting every resident to sleep, but entering their dream and cutting the machine out of it too. Outside the dream, we managed to break into Mr. Morton's study using a handprint made of ink for the scanner. Inside the room are a few dozen TVs stacked upon one another. Turning the TV screens scattered around the room, Victor uses a remote controller to activate the right topmost screen. After pressing the button twice, we wait patiently as the screen displays crucial information. The black corners on the TVs, paired with the specific numbers, form a pattern that the protagonist carefully decodes. This pattern provides the 6-digit key needed to unlock the safe in the office, which grants us access to the master key, which controls Mr. Morton's personal elevator. Retracing our steps back to our apartment, we find Alicia sitting on the ground. Putting the sender on her head and the receiver on ours, we enter her dream. A boat beneath a sunny sky, lingering onward dreamily. In an evening of July, ever drifting down the stream, lingering in the golden gleam. Life, what is it but a dream? Victor enters his wife Alicia's dream and finds himself aboard the SS Albatross, a vast flying cruise ship which also was mentioned in the beginning in Alicia's dream at breakfast. The ship is captained by Alicia herself, now in a sleep-induced coma and known by the crew as Captain Neff. The ship, majestic and surreal, hovers in the sky above what appears to be a densely populated city at twilight. greenish hues clashing against the orange and dark colors of the sunset over the weirdly dystopic looking buildings that extend to the vastness of the horizon. In my opinion, the city below could symbolize Alicia's waking life, full of societal expectations and struggles, while the ship soaring above it represents a retreat into the dream world, space for reflection and escape. The ship's upper deck is bustling with activity, or so it can be heard from the ambience, but strangely enough, the crew seems absent, walking forward towards the bar. On the sun deck, Victor encounters the first stranger, the unusual detail of the dream, a bartender who is an exact copy of himself. The sight is disorienting and at first seems rather eerie. Even the game's soundtrack plays a ringing, echoing bell sound to indicate the creepiness of the encounter. However, we soon learn from this other Victor that the ship's crew is entirely made up of identical versions of Victor, each one assigned to different tasks. Their presence, however, doesn't entirely lack humanity, as most of them, if not all, have slightly different, if not completely different personality from one another. As such, they function as an extension of Alicia's view of Victor, which, in this case being the original, still gets mistaken for the newest recruit and is roped into the ship's operations and tasked with unraveling the disappearance of Victor 11. Moving across the albatross from the sun deck to the dimly lit cabins, Victor pieces together fragments of Alicia's mind. The ship reflects not only her thoughts but her perception of him, with each crew member serving as a distorted mirror. Some are diligent, some indifferent, and others quietly hostile. Their words and actions betray hidden tensions in the relationship, resentment, fears, and expectations Alicia may never voice in the waking world, like the fact Victor may be lazy or unmotivated. It's little things like that which in turn elevate the quite complex world building of each dream and in turn make me love the game even more. Returning to the action of the story, however, Victor discovers death threats and diary entries hinting at missing crew members, painting a quite grim picture. Although unconfirmed at this point, both we and another Victor sitting in one of the off cabins have a suspicion that Victor 11 might be dead. Eventually, we get to solve a puzzle involving a radio that guides us to a space on the bridge with a mermaid statue, which upon pulling the tail off drops a journal featuring diary entries of each missing Victor, the numbers going well above the maybe 20 or so we initially thought were part of the crew. With this discovery, we manage to trick the guard in front of Alicia's cabin, and walking onto the captain's deck, we encounter Alicia, who now has a ghostly appearance, seemingly fading in and out of existence. She's now possessed by the Dream Machine. This part is clear. Victor tries to talk her out of doing anything rash, but to no result. The machine's tentacles can be noticed in the background contouring her, and no matter his attempts, he just cannot reach within. When confronting her about the disappeared Victors, she laughs and pulls a lever, which sends us into a room full of the corpses of those disappeared Victors. In an extremely disturbing twist, the machine is feeding off their decaying bodies, its tentacle pulsing. On the floor, crushed by the mass, we find the body of the bartender, which, although appearing dead at first, wakes up and screams in excruciating pain, begging us to help. No matter what we try to ask him at this point, he only answers with pleas for help. You can mix him some rat poison at this point with alcohol and pour it down his throat, which kills him and poisons the dream tentacle, killing it as such, releasing Alicia from its possession. She lets a rope down and Victor and Alicia hug the terrifying experience out. She reassures him and gives him the courage in order to push forward and cut the tentacles out of the dreams of the other residents. As the guitar intensifies in crescendos, we wake up in the real world, having saved Alicia, and with that, we enter chapter 3.
In chapter 4, we're tasked with entering the homes of our neighbors and putting them to sleep without them calling the police or being alerted. Victor decides to take a detour back to Mr. Morton's study, where he finds a secret door behind a gramophone in his office. He enters what appears to be a laboratory of some sorts, which has lots of research detailing a certain mixture of plants that creates a sleeping gas. Figuring out the code to a metal door tucked in the corner based on the journal entries, he enters one derelict bathroom that has an overgrown plant in the middle of the bathtub. The air is damp, the space barely resembling a bathroom anymore. Overgrown vines twist around rusted pipes. In order to make some sort of sleeping powder, Victor extracts the plant's syrup, following the journal's instructions to mix it with other herbs. With the extracted syrup of the plant and a variety of other plants, based on the notes from Mr. Merton's journal, Victor manages to make an entire can of sleeping powder. Returning with the concoction to the second floor, we ring the doorbell of our neighbor next door, the woman named Eddie. She opens the door and Victor notes there's something important to talk about. She invites Victor in for a cup of tea. Victor figures that spiking the teapot is the best way to get Eddie asleep, so while she's not in the kitchen, he pours the sleeping powder in the teapot. Although Eddie has guests over, they all fall asleep because the entire tea quantity has been spiked. With Eddie knocked out, Victor obtains easy access to her mind. Without much regret and hoping to rid another resident of their tentacle, we put the receiver on us and the sender on her and descend into her dream. Entering her dream leads us to an exact replica of her apartment, although this time massive holes in the form of the void can be found all around. We know from Mr. Morton's earlier story that she was suffering from a disease affecting her memory, most likely Alzheimer's. Aspect that is deeply reflected through her dream, fragmented and broken apart. Victor needs to use picture frames to rearrange the apartment's rooms and in the process view memories of Eddie during her youth. We get to form the layout of the apartment by walking into these fragmented rooms and getting their pictures and hanging them on the wall of the living room. Furthermore, we also obtain pictures featuring people who were important in Eddie's life, mainly her mother and husband. Alzheimer's is a slow unraveling, a quiet erasure of a life once whole, and the subject at hand is tackled here with utmost respect. Memories that once formed the foundation of a person's identity slip away like grains of sand through open fingers, leaving behind only fragments of what used to be. Faces of loved and memories of them turn unfamiliar. The past and present blur into an undistinguishable haze, and the world itself becomes an ever-shifting landscape of confusion. For those suffering, it is a descent into isolation, trapped in a mind that no longer connects with the world as it once did. And for those who love them, it is a cruel paradox, to grieve for someone who is still there, yet slipping away in the ways that cannot be stopped. And for Eddie, a lonely old lady, it represents the destruction, her hope of hanging on to lucidity shattered somewhat by the inevitability of time. Moving the people around and places, we learn Eddie had a miscarriage or lost a child. A grave can be found in the bathroom. Above it, a teddy bear rests on the dirt, untouched by time, as if still waiting for small hands to reach out and hold it. There is no child to return, no laughter to fill the space, only a silent question lingering in the air. How do you grieve for someone you barely had the chance to know? The bear speaks hazily, almost though the dream asking Victor when will its owner return. And next to it is the grave of Eddie's mother that has a picture of her hanged on the crucifix. If we set it up back on the photography wall that all three of them are in the bedroom, we find out Eddie's mother caught her and her at the time boyfriend copulating and was intensely disappointed. So much so that she sat right beside the bed frame, mentioning how disappointed Eddie's father would have been if he was still alive. She speaks not just for herself but for a man no longer there, invoking the weight of a father's disappointment, as though even the dead would turn their backs. Eddie, frozen in shame, unable to speak, watches as her mother lowers herself onto the edge of the bed, not in anger but something worse, deep exhausted sadness. Taking the final picture of the backyard, we encounter Eddie herself. She seems phased and the tentacle controlling her seems to have taken the shape of her mother. In a way, her oppressor in the times when she was young as well. We managed to cut the photo of her mother by making Eddie lower her basket and then raising it up. She cuts it and rids herself of the tentacle and the memory of her mother in the process. As we leave her dream, we realize there are 2 neighbors left, and here we have yet to put them to sleep. And with that, we enter chapter 5. We do a lengthy quest involving the postman and more sleeping powder in order to get a funnel to work and eventually enter one of the neighbors named Williard's dream. Despite his appearance and love for jazz, although he appears to be a warm person, Mr. Williard's dream is cold and quite desolate. A blocky and vast sterile structure, a massive neon blue cube. Its walls made out of thousands of smaller cubes. The air is cold, silent, but for the distant hum of unseen machinery. Unlike Eddie's dream, which was fragmented and organic, this place feels calculated, as if designed to trap rather than reveal. The first room we enter into appears to be empty entirely. However, as we walk closer to the walls, hidden doors reveal themselves, leading to increasingly complex chambers filled with obstacles and puzzles. Walking to the south of the room, we encounter a giant hole. At this point, we are given the prompt to look into the abyss. A prompt appears: look into the abyss. Choosing to inspect it, Victor remarks on the sheer depth, but as the words leave him, they echo back, distorted, twisted. The abyss is speaking, watching. It introduces itself as Legion. We are many. The words vibrate through the space, layered voices folding over one another. Legion presents a challenge in order to solve this dream's puzzle. A challenge not of logic, but of submission. It asks Victor to repeat after it. I am thoughtless in my remarks. I am insignificant. I am easily replaced. Depressing and quite self-deprecating quotes before promptly thanking us and revealing 2 symbols on the wall. It is unknown what Legion's purpose actually is in the context of the Dream Machine, but it appears to be helpful, at least for now. Victor lines up 2 laser rays and then manipulates a prism in order to open the door to a futuristic gown, which allows him to shrink at will. As the ceiling comes down, trying to crush Victor, he shrinks and hides in a hole on the leftmost side of the room. This leads him to a giant labyrinth which seems to stretch endlessly in all directions. A voice tells him that the labyrinth is designed so Victor may not reach the end of it. The machine is speaking, and this time it tries bartering with him, although Victor refuses. Unable to do anything here for now, we head back to the main room, where we enter the room and head to the right side of it, where we discover another passage that leads us to a giant void-like edge. We are now watching a compact wall filled with CRT television sets, displaying eyes staring back at us. The atmosphere is utterly oppressing. The static hums, low and droning, an oppressive presence pressing in. The eyes don't just watch, they blink in uneven rhythms, unnaturally and unlinked, flashing the screens as they shift their gaze around. For now, we cannot do anything in this room filled with eyes, so we return back to the main room and heading towards the northmost part in order to solve a puzzle, we manage to obtain a magic staff on one of the pedestals, and returning to the television screens with it, we manage to amplify the laser beam being shot at the TVs and turn off a bunch of them in unison. They clack with a loud sound as they are being turned off, although now we are left wondering what this has changed. After fumbling our way around for a while, we leave the dream and realize maybe we need something obtained from the other neighbor's dream, a woman named Selma. Although trying to gas her up with the sleeping powder doesn't work because she's far too away from the vent. So going back to Williard's apartment, we turn up the music, making her feel the need to call the landlord. At this point, turning on the gas puts her to sleep and allows us to enter her dream. Entering her dream presents us with a rather stark contrast to Williard's cold artificial world. Selma's dream is lush, greenery, and grass has a neon green color and moss-like appearance. Trees stretch their crowns up into the sky, their silhouettes being the only thing visible as they surround the site of twilight afternoon, which seems to be frozen in time, eternal. There's an ancient, almost mythical air to this place, like a forgotten realm untouched by time. A medieval atmosphere that can be felt setting in slowly in a sort of mystic and intrinsic attempt to return humanity to its roots. Elements which all stem from Selma's real life are accentuated here. Her need of isolation and wish for a simpler life are all reflected in the environment. In the waking world, Selma Teed is a night shift nurse, a quiet presence in the estate. Her odd hours keep her isolated from the other residents, though she maintains polite, distant relationships, and this fact can definitely be felt in her representation of the dream world. Moving along the path in Selma's dream, we encounter a cottage, and upon entering it, we're greeted with a simple farmer-like home. Wood stacked by the wall, small shelves with books, a big furnace in the middle, but there's also a disturbing sight. Right on the left side of the room, there's what appears to be a gutted and dead old man. Although he appears dead at first, upon Victor's approach, he wakes up and identifies himself as Selma's grandfather. He mentions an organ thief that has appeared in the realm and has been stealing organs of all the animals and people around the forest. He also mentions the place we are situated in at the moment is a valley under the name of Eternal Shadow, due to the fact it's forever stuck at twilight. He talks about the residents, the farmers, and multiple things, but most importantly mentions a wall that has raised blocking the sun a few years ago, near the edge of the valley. With the information gathered from the old man, we start pushing forward in the hopes of finding and stopping the organ thief, and cutting the tentacle out of both Selma's and Williard's dream. After having a brief conversation with a squirrel, we meet a crowd of farmers, dressed as executioners, which demand you prove you are not the organ thief, so we have to fake a wound by attaching bandages and covering them in blood to get past them. In the process, they task us with finding their scout. We find her laying on a rock without her legs, them being stolen by the organ thief. We need to find a way to move her at this point, so we proceed forward. We meet a deceased knife who claims he's still alive, although he is long dead, and clearly hasn't been able to move for decades, maybe centuries, as his bones are the only thing that remain inside the armor. We tell him we're going to offer him peace and pick him up. To be more exact, just his bones, as the armor is far too heavy. A lot of the things happen from this point forward in order to progress the story. We meet some pumpkins which seemingly own their own kingdom and become their ruler. We capture a fairy, manage to help the scout and get her bow, and finally we meet Selma by the wall. The sight of the wall seems familiar. The wall of ice is back, since we turned off the TVs on the other side. However, we managed to snap Selma out of it. With her help, the turned off televisions are pushed into the void and break parts of the wall in order to make it to the other side. Using a bow and a ball of yarn, we shoot an arrow on the other side, and after waking up and moving into Williard's dream, we attach it and cross the void with the items we had in Williard's dream into Selma's dream. A little while earlier we found a witch's hut, but every time we knocked, the witch would teleport Victor back to the beginning of the level. So this time we make ourselves tiny and enter the hut. We're given a recipe by the witch that helps us make a potion. Using a bunch of ingredients obtained from this questline, we make a potion that allows us to become giant. At one point we meet a vampire in a small abandoned hut, and knowing the fact the organ thief might not show himself, we set a trap by alerting the townspeople of the vampire. They unfortunately set the hut on fire, so we are forced to put it out. The whole reason we do this is because even after solving the labyrinth in Williard's dream by making ourselves big, we realize we are unable to enter the chamber containing the tentacle. Inside, we can see the machines started building a body, and one of the ingredients is a vampire organ. So we make ourselves small and hide within the vampire. By making ourselves big at the exact right moment, we kill the machine's ability to finish its body and free both Williard and Selma. Selma and Williard are freed, their minds no longer tethered to the machine's grasp. And as such, we return to the waking world, expecting victory, expecting peace. By now we would think that everyone would be freed, but something is wrong. Heading downstairs, we learn the machine is still active, because we have yet to free all of the residents. We can choose at this point to end the game early by becoming a caretaker of the machine, similar to how Jack Torrance becomes the caretaker in The Shining, or try to figure out who the last resident is. A realization dawns, one so terrible that Victor's breath catches in his throat. Victor hesitates, dread creeping into his voice as he rushes up the stairs to his apartment. Opening the door, his wife still lays on the ground. He does not want to be right. He prays for once that he is wrong. But there is only one way to know for sure. The last resident we have not cut out the tentacle out of is our own infant son. Victor, with doubt in his voice and regret, hopes that he is wrong as he puts on the sender on Alicia's pregnant belly and the receiver on his head. And as the machine hums to life, he falls into the dream of a being not yet born. Upon entering the dream, we are greeted with an exact copy of our apartment. Nothing seems changed at first, except the fact the ambience is terrifying. As we explore, the doorbell rings, and at the door stands a man we assume to be dead, Mr. Morton. He opens the door and speaks as if nothing is amiss, recalling how he died in the machine and was pulled into a void, claiming he managed to turn the machine off using a kill switch his grandfather had built, and that everything is fine. Clearly that isn't the case, as the dream tells a different story. Mr. Morton instructs us to go downstairs to check on Alicia, and we follow him into his office. Entering the office, he is missing from the room, but in his place stands a possessed version of Alicia, who is listening to a disturbing tune. As she turns around, she spouts some gibberish before pulling a lever and throwing us into a giant void that was beneath the apartment building, revealing indeed that we are still in a dream. Victor begins falling endlessly in what seems to be a never-ending stretch of utter nothingness. As he contemplates the situation, speaking out loud, his voice starts to echo back, answering him. Legion is back. They are happy we remember them and mention they look forward to spending eternity with us. They make Victor repeat yet again a series of degrading quotes, saying the world is better without him and that no one will miss him when he's gone. Amid the ceaseless barrage of self-loathing, Legion offers a cruel bargain, a wish granted in exchange for his submission. Desperate for any semblance of control or clarity, Victor wishes for something to hold on to, something to see. In response, Legion provides him with a mirror, its surface dark and reflective. A silent promise that even in this endless fall, he might yet glimpse the truth of who he is. Looking into the mirror, we meet one of the past Victors, a version of ourselves trapped in the past in some regard. The two begin having a conversation about trust, and eventually the other Victor tells him he wishes to switch places with him. After our Victor agrees, we are sent back to the morning. At first, everything appears to be fine. We head to the kitchen and Alicia is indeed preparing breakfast. Victor sets the table as usual, but tells Alicia he's sure he's still dreaming. His suspicion is confirmed when he returns to the bathroom and, staring into the mirror, sees the other Victor again, now back in that formless void. The second Victor claims that both versions have ultimately received what they wished for. The original Victor has the comfort of known, steady environment, while Void Victor has escaped into the unbounded nothingness, free from the constraints of a conventional life. In his words, I got out of the dull confines of life: paternity, responsibility, expectations. Their exchange is utterly depressing, as we sort of learn this is exactly the person our Victor would have become had the events of the morning not happened. Their exchange grows more pointed. The Void Victor admits, almost with bitter irony in a very depressing turn, that he chose to endlessly fall in a void over the prospect of fatherhood, or fulfilling the duties that come with being part of a family, because he knows he is not able to take responsibility. He speaks as though those responsibilities are a curse, preferring the isolation of a perpetual void. But given the choice, he would always go back to the tropical island, the dream we saw in the beginning of the game, instead of the perpetual nothingness. Our Victor tries to argue that he is too negative, but the other Victor just doesn't care. We try to tell him our achievements, but he is unfazed and mentions, I'd rather stay comfortably asleep on this side of the looking glass. Left dumbfounded by this confession, our Victor asks what must be done next. The past Victor, in a tone that blends resignation with absurdity, simply requests a sandwich and laments that he had Victor knew what he wanted when he accepted the switch. However, opening the fridge in order to get the sandwich reveals yet another void, this time white, that seems to exist within the fridge. Walking inside the wideness surrounds us, as we fumble through what seems to be an endlessly stretching labyrinth. After some walking, we encounter a giant vague figure, which addresses us as child. An old man stands in front of us, his robe torn, his eyes tired. He welcomes us to his domain as ethereal music plays. A giant book stands in front of him. Victor asks him if he is God, and he says he has many names. Mentions he has been at Victor's side since he has been born and that he's left breadcrumbs up to this point. He asks Victor to become the next person to take his place, the next God. He says the reason is he is out of touch with today's youth and needs someone to guide the youth forward. He says Victor must remain there for eternity and answer prayers from people through the phone. We hear prayers from the people of Earth, each with their own struggles. We picture each person and choose to either accept or deny their prayers. From nothingness, the irresponsible Victor is handed an immense responsibility, not as a punishment but as a way to develop him. Maybe this is his mind shunning him through the void Victor and his perception of God. Is any of this real? God hands us the key to the kingdom before promptly leaving. We're left to answer person after person, struggle after struggle, people crying, people suffering, people asking for the smallest things. We picture each one as more and more light up and more prayers. They start overwhelming us. Victor becomes utterly overwhelmed, and at one point we begin ignoring prayers. They slowly fade away. People stop praying, all but one. Dear God, who is in heaven, help me, I'm your greatest fan. It's a prayer from Victor himself. We learn that Victor was beaten up as a child, his face bruised. The scenery changes to a stage of a certain winter in front of the school. There's a scene depicting the time Victor was beaten up. The line, "they're doing it again," hurts as it means this is not the first time this was happening. Victor explains the events, saying how mean the kids were to him, how even the girl he had a crush on bullied him. He gets off stage afterwards. There's a closet, a locked closet. We use the key for the kingdom of heaven, but it doesn't send us there. It's just a closet. As we are trying to leave, Victor is locked in. A light begins flickering on the wall where a button stands. Pressing the button, we start hearing breathing, beeping, machinery. Pressing it again and again and again and again. It's Victor's mother, bedridden. She says Victor never sees her like that. He tries to argue back. We learn Victor never came to visit her. Victor never cleared his calendar. They never got to say their goodbyes. His mother died without ever seeing Victor. As she starts requesting Victor put flowers on her grave and not leave, we start Fading, we fade back to darkness. Her voice no longer heard. The light beeps, beeps. And the monitor flatlines in the background as the button stops flashing. Opening the closet door returns us to the fractured apartment building. We're back yet again. We meet Eddie again in her apartment and learn that these places feed wishes and memories in a symbiotic manner. We're told to reach the center of the dreamscape and get our child. So we begin on our journey. Opening the staircase on the left, we fall through and find ourselves in a forest of some sorts. Following the path, we are presented in the first person as we approach a younger version of ourselves. Fishing. It asks us why we are so joyless. Why do we look so removed from reality now that we're old? Small fishing pond in the lush forest. The child appears happy in the serenity of the lake. He suggests we switch places with him to try and reach the unborn child, because regressing in age might draw us closer to the center of the dreamscape. He tells us he chose to look this way, and we only have to make a wish. We try to ask him, but something pulls us back, again and again. Our screams never reach him as another dream leaves our grasp. Using a lifeboat we find in the front of the apartment, we descend onto Alicia's dream and are tasked with finding our way to the center of the dreamscape using the SS Albatros. We go across all previously visited dreams to obtain our items, and then journey to the center of the dreamscape. The center of the dreamscape is the constantly shifting area of the dreamscape where life and consciousness itself first appears. All life passes through it before it enters the rest of the world, but it does not belong to any one individual, and thus is hard to access again. Reality there is very fluid, shaped and reshaped by simple thoughts. As we enter, we encounter a version of Victor who has turned itself into a child. There are multiple other Victors around the center of the dreamscape, ranging in age, wisdom and time being on Earth. The child version of Victor mentions he has turned himself into a child in hopes of getting closer to the birth barrier, a barrier that separates those born from those who dream before birth. The birth barrier is a metaphysical concept that prevents passage to the prenatal realm from the center of the dreamscape. Normally, a mind at the center can wish for anything they can imagine, but those wishes can only derive from their own memories. As no one has memories of being born, it is impossible for a person to wish themselves back past the birth barrier, and thus it is usually inaccessible. Because Victor's child is an unborn child, baby Victor's theory is that the closer you get in age to the point, the closer you are to the birth barrier, and the closer you are to passing into the prenatal realm. As duplicates, the Victors we meet along the way have the exact same history as Victor, though with slightly different decisions being made. Each one is brought into existence by the wishes of a previous Victor, creating an endless cycle of Victors. One stayed in God's kingdom endlessly, answering prayers until its body decayed. One abandoned hope and wishes to relive nostalgia. An endless number of copies of Victor Neff himself going in a constant loop of creation and death, wishing one another into existence. Each Victor eventually goes off to their own private spot and shapes it to their own desire in a tragic and utter self-indulgent manner. The Victor that wished us into existence in this case is the one hidden in the cinema from the center. This Victor gave up on looking for the prenatal realm and instead created a theater for himself to view memories, both his own life and previously watched shows. He's the Victor who brought the main Victor into existence, in order for him to perform in a play about his childhood. He also teaches Victor how to bring another Victor into the center as well. The geography of the center is impossible to plot. Any attempt at making a map will fail as the world changes. Certain small areas can be charted, areas where other Victors can be found. Using these maps, it is possible to rearrange the center as well, altering geography further. So we take on a quest to collect the map of each Victor, solving their feuds and in the process learning more about the original Victor's unwillingness to change. From the fact neither baby Victor nor middle-aged Victor made peace with each other after the fight, the inability of Victor to move forward is presented to us. After solving the questline and following the map and assembling them in Eddie's dream, and returning to the center of the dreamscape and following the path leads us to the scene of our birth. As Victor is forced to birth himself, or another Victor, which is a fetus version of him. This is the final Victor that our Victor encounters. Inside his mother's womb, blocking access through the birth barrier, he discovered the barrier long ago, before any other Victors appeared, and chose to barricade it with his own body. This perhaps being the original Victor, the one who figured it out without a map. He warns us that he holds the barrier in order for the machine to not reach our child, but in our recklessness we doubt him. There's no other option. We either abort him or birth him. By attaching some yarn to his leg, we manage to pull him out and watch the scene of our birth. Entering back into the birth canal and reaching into the womb, we walk into a narrow passage and start moving towards the light. Thousands of voices, people we've known in our lives, are reaching out as we approach the light, even different versions of ourselves. Alicia, the landlord, Legion. We eventually walk in. What follows is existential dread as time itself is warped and moved. Reality bends under Victor's puny perception. He trembles in fear, but it accelerates faster, 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 until absolution. Now in the birth barrier, Victor sees that he has made a mistake and allowed the Dream Machine to enter into the prenatal realm. As we walk into what seems to be an endless string of rows, each of them representing life, each of them connecting, a guitar sings sadly behind. We push forward knowing that we've made a grave mistake. We push towards an undescribable and eternal hell. We push towards the point of birth. Walking on the narrow path, we reach the child, now possessed by the machine. We ask it to let go of our child. It argues back that our child is like a parasite, feeding off our wife. It refuses. Victor becomes desperate and says that he'll rupture the umbilical cord, killing both the machine and the infant. The machine proposes they don't need to both suffer. It can take the responsibility away from Victor, possesses his dream, putting him into an eternal sleep and feeding off his body until death. Victor reluctantly agrees. Although he has learned his lesson, it's far too late, and this time, taking responsibility means dying for the sake of others and leaving behind a single mother, a single child, and being forever bedridden. He asks the machine to do it, and taking the lifeboat, he gets thrown into the machine. Alicia tries to wake him up, but no matter what, his soul is lost, long gone. We return to the island, this time at twilight, Victor's eternal home. As he sets off his fishing rod, he sits peacefully. There's a gap in between. There's a gap where we meet, where I end and you begin.